From Datarails, this is FP&A Today.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to FP&A Today. I am your host, Paul Barnhurst, aka the FP&A Guy, and you are listening to FP&A Today. FP&A Today is brought to you by Datarails, financial planning and analysis platform for Excel users. Every week, we welcome a leader from the world of financial planning and analysis. And today, we're going to do something a little different. We have a leader who's the CEO of Lead Pages with us, and we're going to have her talk about her experience with finance, what she looks for in finance leaders, how she's worked with FP&A. So a little bit of a different perspective today. As I've mentioned, FP&A Today is going to be your go-to resource for everything FP&A. We encourage you, if you haven't had the chance, to provide a rating on the platform you listen to. And also we give you a reminder that you can earn CPE credit for this course. You'll just need to go to Earmark and you can go in there and they'll ask you some questions and you can get that credit. So with that being said, I'm thrilled to welcome today's guest on the show. I have with me today, Jeanette Dorazio, coming to us from Minnesota. Jeanette, welcome to the show.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to have you. So let me just tell you a little bit about Jeanette. We actually worked together at Solera. So fun fact there. She comes to us from Minnesota. She's currently the CEO of Lead Pages. She went to school at the University of Minnesota. She's a member of the Forbes Technology Council. And over her career, she's worked with several different companies in multiple product and client success roles. So I'm going to go ahead and give her a chance to just tell us a little bit about herself and her background.
I can do that. Thanks, Paul. So as you pointed out, I've had various different roles within technology. Currently, I am with Lead Pages. We are a drag and drop, no code. You can build websites and landing pages in the marketing technology space. So fast growth SaaS company, which is what I enjoy, being with those type of companies. I'm really good with creating growth and transformation strategies. I love building high-performing teams too in the technology space. That's what I'm passionate about. And innovation, right? It's all about innovation in this space. So I've been in technology for 20 plus years, various different industries, retail, automotive, marketing now, e-commerce, payment providers, as well. I spent some time with Oracle, Verifone, et cetera. So yeah, lots going on in my career. Technology is a great time, great space to be in right now. And, can't wait to see how it evolves going forward.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree with you. Technology, it's a great time. It's amazing to see how things continue to change and evolve, particularly around SaaS and subscription businesses, right? 10 years ago, they were just starting. Today, most companies have the majority of their IT spend is some kind of SaaS or subscription service business.
No, that's spot on too. And it's also, spawning some others, platforms as a service, right? And you look at some of those cloud technologies and, Google, Amazon, platform as a service, right? I love it that I don't have servers in a physical location anymore. Risk reward type of thing, but brings that cost down and it's way more efficient. So I really like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Platform as a service, business processing as a service. You see
Exactly.
So many things today that as a service, right? Just slap as a service at the end of it. So I'm curious, I know you're the CEO of Lead Pages. Was it always your goal to be a CEO or, what ultimately led to you becoming a CEO?
Sure. So yes, I think my goal is always, I don't know if it was CEO necessarily, but my goal has always been to run a company. For many years coming up through a product management path through technology, I was really good with marketing and operations, side of businesses. So I did have, kind of was leading in the operations path, but, lo and behold, this opportunity at Lead Pages came up to a little over 2.5 years ago. So right there in a pandemic, of course. So that was an interesting challenge to my leadership methodologies that I've used in the past. But so yeah, I've always liked leading teams, building businesses, building companies, and that's what led me here. So I've been, I guess, training for this for a long time, and here I am.
Got it. No, that makes sense. And that's great that you've achieved that goal of yours. It's, always rewarding to get where we want to be. Not always as
Absolutely.
easy as we might think, but definitely
No.
rewarding. So maybe can you talk to us a little bit about Lead Pages? What you guys do, what the company is.
Sure. So Lead Pages, actually, we're going to celebrate our 10-year anniversary in January. So the company's been around, obviously 10 plus years here. It was founded to solve a problem that marketers had with getting leads. And how do I do this, especially in the digital space with e-commerce? And back in the day, you had to find a front-end developer and probably use a WordPress platform. So Lead Pages came onto the scene, and the problem they were trying to solve is providing customers with an easy way to build those landing pages. And that's how the company was born. So yes, our core competency where we bring our values with building those helping people, small businesses, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs who have no idea how to do marketing. We provide them tools and services to build landing pages, websites. We're all about getting them leads and getting them revenue. And that's what Lead Pages does. That's we exist to help those entrepreneurs and small business owners kind of realize their dreams and their passions, and see them bring it to life.
Got it. And I can relate to trying to figure out marketing as a solopreneur and Lead Pages and all those different things as I launch different ideas and ways to generate revenue. So I definitely know it's something a lot of solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, early stage need help with. It's not always the easiest thing to figure out.
No, sure. not at all. Yeah.
So that's great that you have that. So, obviously our show here, we're dedicated to finance, in particular FP&A. So we're going to get into a couple questions around that. Can you maybe talk about, how your experience has been over your career working with finance and FP&A?
Absolutely. So my experience and how I explain this to people that ask me about my relationship with finance teams I've worked with is first and foremost, they're my partner. They have a seat with me at the table, whether I was creating a new product at Oracle as a product manager and trying to understand, how do I model the demand on this thing, right? That I'm building, all the way up to my current role. They're an integral part. They're very important to not only myself but others understanding the business and the opportunities, and they just bring another mindset to the team and to the table that I've really enjoyed and respected. There's been some times where they're also in the trenches with you, right? And they're going to experience what your experience, they experience. So I have a mantra of one team, one mission, and they're part of my team and sitting right there at the table with me.
That is good to hear. I like to hear when people are, at the table with you. I know, finance, in particular, FP&A, the way it's viewed, the need for it has changed a lot over the last, few years, especially the pandemic and other things. But maybe let's start on kind of, I don't want to call it a negative note, but what's maybe a bad experience you've had with, working with FP&A, something that didn't go right or where you've been frustrated? And what do you wish they had done differently to better support you?
Well, that's a good question. Wow. I don't know if that I would call them negative experiences necessarily. I think there's been a couple times too with my FP&A colleagues where there's been assumptions made, right? You're working on a project. You think we're going one way. They think they're going another way. Whether it's an analysis or I'll give you a recent example. We're trying to model out some retention forecast and what we think churn rate's going to be. And there's everybody has their interpretation of the data differently and where it needs to go. And I had some numbers come up, and they got communicated to the parent company, to my boss, and lo and behold, after we challenged those numbers turned out not to be right. There was an assumption that the the finance person had made about the business that they weren't entirely up to speed about. So we had just a small miss that made it into a budget, into the forecast. So we had to, back that off. But, here's the deal. Everybody makes a mistake. We know that, especially within Lead Pages, we have a culture of, if we're going to fail, let's fail fast. Let's figure it out. So we were able to quickly change that. The benefits of working for a smaller company is, a little bit more squishy, not squishy, but a little bit more leeway on, some of those forecasting that we can reforecast and stuff. But what I've learned from that too is communication, is key, and just making sure that, both of us are understanding each other and what our needs are. And, I've had a couple times where, we'll go over something and, my question has been, are you sure? Do you get it? But then, vice versa too. They've asked me the same thing, hey, Jeanette, do you understand the numbers I'm going, what I'm thinking? So, kind of a long answer, but I won't call it a bad experience other than, an opportunity where we kind of two ships crossed in the night, and, we had to come back on course.
Thanks for sharing that. It sounds like the key takeaway from that is really just that importance of making sure you're communicating and
Correct.
that you're aligned on all the assumptions.
Correct.
Right? None of us want to have to explain to senior management or to anyone at a high, investors,
Yep.
whoever it may be, there was an error or there was a bad assumption or there was a miscommunication, whatever it might be, and we need to bring the number down. Right? Never a fun situation.
Absolutely not. No.
I remember my first year SaaS business was Solera, where we
Yep.
worked in Auto Point and worked with my manager, and we put together a forecast. I think churn the first month was 3 times higher than what we had forecasted.
Yep.
The year was done. That was a fun one to explain, and it didn't get better. But
Exactly.
that's another story. So I can definitely relate to that, making a forecast, error with the churn. That was a learning experience, as you said.
Completely. And I think what, just to expand on that, what's been really challenging the past 2 years, is trying to forecast off a pandemic fueled business. Lead Pages was one of those. We were very fortunate to be part of that digital explosion, I'm going to call it. And, just understanding. And I think talk to any CEO these days, big company, small company, mid-sized company, anywhere in between, everything just got thrown out of whack. And, it's been hard to predict some demand and some of what the market's going to do, because we've got, some big pendulums swinging back and forth, and we're not sure where it's going to land. I'm hoping we're through it, relatively soon. We've got some economic headwinds where everybo's dealing with, but that's been really challenging. Just to come back and say, pandemic, I think there's some grace you get with being able to use that reasoning, but we'll see where the world ends up.
Yes, as I saw, I think it was on a mug or a shirt somewhere, they called it EBITDA-C. Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization, and coronavirus. Right? Or COVID. And so in your case, that might be a positive. You want to take it out for the future and be like, okay, now we've level setted without COVID of what we think we can grow. Because once you hit a number, everybody wants to continue to see that growth. And you're like, oh, there's some things that have changed.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. And that's great that you're benefited, but then it also creates a challenge of how do you keep that momentum going in a different environment?
Completely. Yeah. No, absolutely.
So maybe, on the flip side, you shared that experience where, it was a learning experience. What's been maybe some of the, something really positive you've seen from FP&A, maybe where they've made a real difference in the business, something went right. Maybe just share an example there.
Oh boy. Had a lot of those actually.
That's good. That's what I like to hear.
That's why this role is so important. There's been a couple projects and I've had over the past few years where having my my FP&A there at the table and understand the business. One one item in particular is we were trying to forecast, staying on the pandemic theme, we were trying to forecast out what our revenue was going to be, for fiscal year 22, I believe it was. And, the company was just acquired. So there was all kinds of new things. People weren't sure. And what, the person I was working with, found that we weren't accounting for a big source of our revenue. It was another sales channel we had. It was kind of missed in the previous forecasting, right? Again, you're acquired. There's a lot going on. You're trying to figure through that. But, they spotted a miss, that, me and my leadership team didn't see that, and brought that to the table. And, lo and behold, that helps some of our operating profit that we're trying to figure out where we're going to get it from. So, what I really appreciated is that, they saw it, we talked about it, they provided their reasoning, here's where I found it, here's what's going on. And, such a positive experience, right? And it just fueled a great amount of just optimism in the team, right? Especially during the pandemic where you're trying to slug along. We're getting through an acquisition, hey, it's all positive. See the potential that we have. And that's what they brought to the table. I mean, that's just one example of many that I've had with them. On the other side too, looking at a churn retention in a SaaS business and trying to figure out what that's going to be and what the patterns have been. And, it was about a year and a half ago where the person I was working with, actually noticed some interesting patterns that we were having in the churn cycle. And, brought a couple suggestions to the table on the business side that, wasn't anticipating that they would bring to the table. And, great idea. And we implemented it. We looked at some cohorts a little bit differently, customer cohorts than we have, in the past. And, we implemented it and we're in a much better spot than we were, a year and a half ago on it. So couple just examples of real, just positive interactions I've had with FP&A.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's good to hear where they're adding those value, finding those insights that we may not notice, or providing suggestions that, can help drive the business forward. Because I like to think of it as, FP&A really is there to help create value, to be a strategic
Absolutely.
consultant from a number perspective.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so sound like you agree. So how do you think, obviously, the economy, we're a little bit of a downturn. Some people say we're in a recession. It all depends on who you ask. What we do know is inflation's up, interest rates are up. We're seeing a few more layoffs. A lot of people, it's a challenging environment, right?
Correct.
And so how do you see the role of the finance function in this type of an environment? Does it change for you? Does the value that you want to see from your finance function change? Or how do you think about it in this kind of environment we're in right now?
Great question. I mean, because I always have finance as part of my team, they're a key component, a key team player. I don't see that changing necessarily, other than what's coming at us is different business strategies and different ways of looking at things. So sure, business, for centuries, business goes up, business goes down. And what I appreciate about my finance partnerships that I have right now is, we just change business strategies. How do we need to react to a labor market? 9 months ago, the labor market was so hot. I couldn't keep software engineers. We had to figure out how to do that. And conversely, we have churn a little bit higher. So, for me, they play a really important part of, they also keep me level headed, right? And keep others level headed in the business and not, they help us see the patterns. A lot of times, they've got their ear, to other parts of the financial world that we don't have. So I really rely on them as a partner, and another set of eyes and ears and how we need to adjust as a business to be able to adapt.
That makes sense. And I'm, glad to hear that they're really that key member of the team. A lot of things that you said there made sense to me. And it just made me think of a question a little bit. Going to change subject on you just a little here for a minute. Something we talked about before we started on the podcast is I know you guys are product-led growth. Very,
Yep.
very little sales. I think you said maybe one person or whatever. It's almost all through affiliate and product. So are there key metrics you look at, kind of things in the reporting way that you expect from your CFO and your finance team? And maybe what are those? What are those kind of key metrics that you really look at them to provide for you?
There's so many metrics. I mean, where do I start?
That's why I said key. I didn't say metrics.
For me, there's about a half a dozen or so that I look at on a daily basis that come from my finance team that help me keep a pulse on the business. You have your standard SaaS metrics. How am I doing with our MRR, monthly recurring revenue? What's the cash flow looking like? Bookings, right? For us, we are a trial-based business. So, our customers come into us and their journey starts typically with a trial. So I've got metrics around how they're performing in the trial. Usage as well. We've recently built a group of success coaches, we call them onboarding specialists that, as we mentioned earlier, our customer base typically they aren't marketing experts. So they need some help and some guidance. I look at some metrics around how many people we're putting through that pipeline. Obviously, churn and retention and how that's tracking for the month. And because we are PLG, there's some key marketing metrics that I look at too. So our trial conversion rate, our trial to paid rate, as well as our return on ad spend, because we are putting some considerable investment against those paid media opportunities and channels that we have to go through. So really, is if I boil that up to on a daily basis and a snapshot of quickly what I look at, right? Revenue, how are we trending with revenue for the month, top line? How are we looking as far as those billings and bookings that we're getting? I also pay close attention to our LTV to CAC ratio. I'm not the only business that experienced this, but last year at this time, the cost to acquire a customer was astronomical. Call it, some people attribute that to the changes Apple made and in their advertising and how they serve data up to people. But it got really expensive to buy that. So we know that the health of the business, we want that ratio to be very good ratio for SaaS business. So I keep a keen eye on how we're doing there. And then just around our operating profit, how it's looking for the month, and that cash flow and seeing how we're going. So those are my key ones I look at. Obviously, we could go in depth. There's, 30 some key metrics for SaaS business that
yeah, there's definitely a lot you can look at. I really like when you said LTV to CAC. I think that's a huge one for SaaS businesses. Obviously, cash burn, understanding cash is always important. Runway, bookings is huge. ARR, whether you're looking at, also looking at committed to understand, okay, how much do I have coming in this month to add to it, and all those different things that help you understand that. And I really like how you mentioned, obviously being PLG led, is how efficient CAC helps tell part of that, but how efficient are we being in our marketing spend? What's the conversion rate? Because little percentages can make a huge difference there. A couple of basis points here or there can really, make the difference between hitting a plan or not.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yes, those, I hate to call them funnel metrics because, sure, you've got the funnel metrics in our marketing machine, but, I'm really looking at the health of the business on a month to month. And, as you know, with SaaS, it can get pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? Fluid sometimes. And, trying to forecast what the business is going to do in a certain area with a certain customer base. But, we've got some good tools around that. And, we use, if we want to get into tools a little bit, I don't know if you have that a question later, but, we had some, one challenge I had is we had some disparate sources of, where we're storing information. So we've got some great platforms we use now, but, I've got a fantastic data analyst. He's top notch, and, we've actually consolidated a lot of that into one place. So he calls it Jeanette's dashboard. So Jeanette has her own dashboard and has several of those items I just mentioned.
Yeah, that is always good to have as a great data analyst or somebody who can put your data together, build those dashboards, work with all those disparate systems that we so often have, and try to consolidate that tech stack, whether it's a finance, the business, the operational. There's just a lot of data, a lot of systems. And if you don't get control of it, as I'm sure, as you know, right, it becomes a real challenge. So that's great that you got a good handle on that. You know what it is like. 13 different spreadsheets emailed out to 23 different budget holders. Multiple iterations, version control, errors, back and forth updates. You never really feel in control of the consolidation and collection process. Yep, I've been there. Stop, breathe. Datarails is the financial planning and analysis platform for Excel users. Datarails takes data from all your company's disparate sources. No organization is too complex, consolidating everything into one place, secured in the cloud. Now all your data finally talking to each other. Everything is automated back into your report in Excel. Cash flow, FX conversion, intercompany transactions, now automated and up to date. Drill down and variance analysis in seconds. Don't replace Excel, embrace Excel. Turn your Excel into a lean, mean FP&A machine. Find out more at www.datarails.com. As a CEO, how do you set about, starting to build that finance function? So a couple things with that. When do you think of adding maybe FP&A, CFO, growing that team? How do you think about that?
Great question. So, as I've talked about finance being a key partner, somebody at the table, I think it's important to incorporate finance disciplines, finance functions as early as possible in the life cycle of any business. As your business scales, I don't know if there's the exact sweet spot in number, but for me, anything that's going between 2 and 5 million in revenue, you're trying to get up there a little bit. A bit larger of a footprint with a finance team. So what does that mean, right? Maybe you have a finance leader, whether it's a CFO, VP of finance. You have somebody that does the accounting, right? And, understanding how we need to code those bills and, accounts payable. And then having an FP&A person there, I think, at least my experience has been that's the last discipline that's added. And I would argue that should be a very close first. First you got your CFO, but the discipline needs to be earlier rather than later. Sure, you can, whatever goods or services you're selling, the software you're selling, you kind of, you get your money in, money out, right? You just key disciplines, but not understanding what you could do with that, or potential market opportunity, or, maybe there's a different investment strategy we should be looking at. That role I found has been so important, and to bring in as early as possible. Obviously you look at some bigger companies, they've got so many multi-levels of discipline within finance. It's kind of crazy. But minimum, somebody to run the books, somebody to run the accounting, make sure, we're paying expenses, paying bills, et cetera. But then somebody on that balances that can really talk to you about business strategy and where you need to go, and what's happening in this world that you're in, I think is key.
Something I've heard you mention a lot is looking to FP&A to also help with business strategy. It feels like you view FP&A, obviously there's the number perspective they bring, but you're really looking for them to be part of that discussion and be able to understand the strategy and understand the business.
Absolutely. Yep. 100%. I've found that when they're not, they tend to be defaulted into more of what I would call traditional finance, right? They're, maybe they get stuck on taxes or compliance or something. Yes, it's very important, but it's really not their passion, right? Most FP&A folks that I have worked at really want to understand the business, get involved, help plan different strategies. As I was, early in my career with, product management, building technology solutions, having that person that was able to, hey, help me with a revenue model, right? This exec is asking for a revenue model. I'm pretty sure that if I say we're going to sell a lot, that's not really going to resonate with them. So, help me put that together and quantify that, what that means. So, they're very important part of my world.
I really appreciate that you recognize the importance of strategy, because I feel like that's where FP&A can really add value, right? 100%. The spreadsheet, the numberings, the modeling, okay, that's great. Yeah. But without understanding the business, there's just a piece that's missing. That's always been something I've really, in my career, I've tried to pride myself on and enjoyed, is understanding the business and trying to think of ways of how do we bring value, not, hey, you need to cut your expenses because you're 100,000 off on EBITDA. No, I won't take this cross charge or whatever, right? Those type of things. There was an inside joke there between Jeanette on the cross charge comment. I'll tell the story here to give people a laugh. We had a leader that was asking me to cross charge everything. And I was like, well, if we're going to cross charge this, we also have to cross charge these expenses over here. And I'm pretty sure they'll wash out. And he finally just like, all right, I give up. We're not cross charging it.
Yeah, we got him. We got him.
So it was a fun little back and forth I had with one of the leaders, and Jeanette got to hear some of those conversations. So that's why I threw in the cross charge. So we'll give a little backstory for those. It was a fun time.
Yeah, you got to have fun in finance, right?
You do. So next question here. What advice would you offer for the FP&A function to make themselves more prominent as a profession? I mean, what do you think that's kind of held them back? Because for the longest time, they were viewed as back office. And I think that's starting to change. Right. But what's kind of your take there?
It's visibility, right? We're in such a great time right now. Like it or love it, right? Social media content and just understanding, what does this discipline do? What is it about? So, visibility is just important. Corporations are businesses. They've always had these roles, right? They've, big finance team, hundreds and hundreds of people. But I think with, especially where we cater to, which is those small businesses, and, you have access to some of these platforms and people like yourself that, are out there, whether it's podcasts, whether it's content on YouTube, whether it's, LinkedIn is a great place. I love your posts that you have, Paul, about, you take a small little discipline, something that, like you said, modeling or, pivot tables. Let's talk about a pivot table, right? But you bring it to a place to where it's easily understandable, and business owners can digest that and understand that. And I think doing more of that is key. In fact, I've got some, people in finance that I'm mentoring with. I actually reverse mentor with them. They actually teach me a lot about the trials and tribulations and the fun things, and not so fun things about FP&A, but really having that conversation and understanding how important. I think too with the the explosion of, we were talking about as a service solutions earlier. I think in the fintech world, they've really come to a great place with, different solutions and platforms that help you with that discipline that you didn't have access before in the past. It was usually somebody or some group of team, and oh my gosh, good luck if I could get access to that. But now that there is so much information and somebody like yourself bringing it together and having it easily digestible has been great. And I've often sent a link to your postings that you put in LinkedIn to other folks that I'm mentoring, and just to as they're trying to get in the FP&A role, which has been really, really helpful for them too. So wrapping that all up, visibility, keep talking about it, keep asking the question, right? There's been times where maybe I've been in a business discussion and I've said, "Stop! Where's the finance person? Where are they?" Right? Let's make sure they're here, and know how important it is to strategically where we're trying to get.
Thank you for sharing that. And I couldn't agree more, is trying to be more visible, continuing to share what the function's about, being outspoken, making sure you're involved in the business, where needed. And I think those are all great ways to continue to increase the visibility of FP&A and help it move forward.
Absolutely.
So, you've talked a lot about the importance of strategy and seat at the table and, looking to finance to really kind of be that voice. What's maybe the top one or two things you look for from your CFO? We've talked about a number of different things. What do you really want from a CFO?
Well, communication is key. I think, and I mentioned in my example before, everybody has a different viewpoint of the world. And I appreciate the diverse perspectives and opinions that my CFO brings to the table. I think secondly too is just that honesty and transparency, right? I know there's sometimes people feel like they've got to not bring bad news to the table necessarily, right? And I welcome that. Not that anybody wants to hear bad news, but let's have that conversation. We're all part of the same team. Let's figure out how we solve that problem together. And I appreciate having the opportunity to do that earlier versus later when something, maybe is a little bit harder to try and fix. But, for me, communication and, like I said, honesty and transparency are the two key things I look for. And third, somebody that just, is really passionate about what they do and has an openness to teach me. Right. I don't propose to know everything there is to know about finance. Otherwise, I'd be probably in a CFO role. But I appreciate, them willing to teach me or to educate me in something that, I may not be completely up to speed about. So yeah. So two, added a third one in there for you.
Yep. So I got it. So three things we talked about. You talked about obviously communication. Key. I mean, so important in any role, but especially, a senior leader, you need them to communicate. I love the point about honesty and transparency. It benefits nobody to hide something, to try to think, oh, we can fix it or we'll tell them about it later. It is just never a good idea. It never ends well. I've seen it. I can remember sitting in a meeting where somebody wasn't wanting to bring something up. They were trying to hide it. And it took me a while to figure out what they were doing. And I'm like, just tell them already. Let's just move on and get it over with. This is silly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Agree. Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
And then I think the third one you mentioned there is just being willing to help, educate and mentor and help teach. Right. Yeah. Because we all need to learn and we all have our different functions we focus on for a reason. We all have our strengths. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. And they're part of, I like my CFO to be, I said it this whole interview, right? Part of that team. And, we fight together, we win together. And, it's important that, we're all invested in, the one thing, make the main thing, as they say. So.
Makes sense to me. So we're coming up toward the end of our time here. We got a few more minutes and just a couple more questions. We're going to kind of shift gears a little bit. And these are pretty much standard questions we ask everybody. So you'll get a couple ones here. The first one that we like to ask everybody is describe a time you had an experience, or maybe there was and I use this word loosely, right? A failure at work. Something didn't go as planned. Maybe an implementation went wrong, some kind of analysis, whatever it might have been. And what was the learning from that? What was kind of the takeaway from that experience?
Well, there's, I think the pandemic there's no shortage of learnings from the pandemic, and having to pivot not only your leadership but businesses as well. I think there was one example where we had some folks that wanted to go try something new, right? A different position. Different places, which I always encourage, right? As a leader, my job is to make sure that you're not only successful where you are, but where you want to go. These folks have been with the company for a little while. What I underestimated was the impact that they would have when they exited and went on to their next journey. I think it was exacerbated with the pandemic because usually they all work together very closely, in person. Mm-hmm. And you take that element of not being in person, and being back in the two-dimensional world. And, I underestimated the reaction and how long, it would take for people to, say goodbye to that person, grieve, try to figure out, oh my goodness, what are we going to do without them? So it just took a little longer than usual. And part of that is I'm a leader that likes to be present, and, the pandemic didn't allow us to do that. So, learnings from that are, when we do have people that move on to something different, and, or even if they're getting promoted internally, right? It's a different role somebody's taking. So what I do is, I allow for, I allow that grace period, that time for people to absorb the change, and to understand that change as they pivot to something else. So,
So
pandemic.
It sounds like it was harder. The transitions of those people was a lot harder than you anticipated and had to learn and adjust.
Completely. Yeah.
Makes sense. And the pandemic exacerbated all of it.
Oh, absolutely. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Not surprising. It exacerbated a lot of things for all of us, I think. Definitely not just that one. So next question. This is a fun one we ask everybody. What is something unique about you that you can share with our audience? Something they wouldn't find out online?
Okay. Well, I actually probably wouldn't find, you'd have to do some digging online, but I actually had the opportunity to work in Paris for quite a few months. When I was with Oracle, we had a couple large customers in France, in Paris, and having taken high school and college French, and having several folks that people I knew that were from France, I got the opportunity to spend I think it was 2-3 months there, just working very closely with colleagues. Got to meet some great people. I got to practice my French a little bit more, which was really good for me to do and see a different culture. But I don't think you'd find that online about me. I'll be surprised if somebody does. But
sounds rough. But somebody has to go to France.
It was horrible, right? Yeah.
That's what I figured. I could tell. You're just like, oh man, I got to take one for the team. All right. So next question here for you. We'll see what we get on this one. Okay. Finance people love this question, but I know, you're not our typical guest in the sense that went up through the finance ranks. So finance people love Excel. Our sponsor is an Excel-based FP&A platform, Datarails. And we like to ask everybody, what is your favorite Excel? It could be formula, function, feature, but what's your favorite thing about Excel?
Oh, boy. My favorite thing about Excel. Oh, boy. I don't know if I have a function necessarily. because I don't get into that. I usually have a team of folks that, or Paul, when you and I used to work together, you did my functions for me. I do like and they added it, many, many years ago, but when they brought out pivot tables and I was, able to do a very quick pivot table, as a product manager, there was a lot of times where I had to be, I was asked for the different slices of data, tell me different customer base, or, what do you think, what do you think, the market's going to be in a certain spreadsheet, all this data. So I love that pivot table function and being able to go in there and pull some data out very quickly and succinctly and get that to the person asking for it. It made me look like a genius. So I love that. Almost like people didn't know if hey, is Jeanette part of finance? Is she not? Boy, wow, she really knows her stuff. So that's one of my favorite features in Excel.
You're not alone. I've had more than one guest say pivot tables is their favorite. It's a great thing. It's easy to consolidate things. So I totally understand that one. I've spent probably way more hours than I'd ever like to admit working with pivot tables. So
yes, absolutely.
I understand that one. So last question we have for you is, what advice would you offer to someone starting their career today in FP&A?
Mentors, sponsors. Mentors are key. I talk about this a lot. I'm very passionate about leadership and growing, helping people grow in their careers, and whether it's finance, technology, maybe some other discipline, customer success, etc. Finding a mentor, finding somebody or many people. A lot of people think, what? I just need one mentor. You need many mentors. I've got many, and they've evolved over the years depending on where your career is and what you need. But it's just getting involved. Any local industry groups are really good with doing that as well. I'm as you mentioned, I'm part of the Forbes Technology Council, and I'm constantly searching for whether it's a mentor for myself. Maybe it's on a topic I don't know about, or maybe it's for somebody else, right? It's really making those connections and talking about it. And I don't think, at least in my experience lately, finance is kind of that really cool subject, cool discipline that's going on. It's not, like you said, hidden in the back office, right? Oh, go talk to my back office person. It's not that anymore. It's really become front and center. Data is wonderful, but somebody that's starting out, get those mentors, talk to people. I know it can be hard for some finance people because they tend to be a little bit more introverted, and that sounds so overwhelming. But just ask, raise your hand. You'd be surprised at the number of people who will be more than happy to have a conversation or, coffee or, take you out to lunch or whatever to just have that conversation and meet other people. It helps a lot.
To sum it up, find a mentor.
Find a mentor.
Have a mentor. I think that's a great answer. And I know they've helped me in my career. So last thing, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you or, learn more about lead pages or just see things you do, what's the best way to do that?
The best way to do that. So I'm on LinkedIn, Jeanette Dorazio. You can find me there. That's usually where I hang out the most. But otherwise, leadpages.com, all one word, leadpages.com. You can also get in touch with me through that channel as well. But yeah.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you for being a guest today. Appreciate you providing a different perspective for us, coming from the CEO seat versus the finance seat. So again, it was a pleasure having you on the show, Jeanette.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was great to discuss, have the opportunity to talk more about my relationship and partnerships with finance. I loved it. Thank you.
Thanks.